get this, adding think step by step can make AI way better at some tasks.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild, right? It's called chain of thought prompting, and it's changing how we talk to AI.
Huh, interesting. It's like giving them a roadmap instead of expecting them to just jump to the answer.
Yeah, exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into a paper about this, about when it works and why. Turns out it's not a magic trick that works every time.
Right.
We're looking at two Tornado Cut Chain of Thought Helps Mainly.pdf.
Catchy title.
I know, right? It kind of says it all.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
So the researchers looked at 110 papers.
Wow.
Yeah, over 1,200 experiments and across 264 data sets. They wanted to see, if chain of thought prompting, COTCHNT for short, is always the best way to go.
Okay, so before we get into all that, can you explain what COTCHNT prompting is? Like, for people who aren't, AI experts.
Sure. So imagine you're asking a math problem, like, what is 1856 minus 2?
Okay.
Traditional prompting, the direct answer kind, is like using a calculator. You just want the answer. But with COTI, you're asking the AI to show its work, to break down the problem step by step.
Oh, like how a student would explain their reasoning on a test.
Exactly.
So instead of just 1854, the AI would say, 1856 minus 2, that equals 1854.
Yeah, exactly. The paper calls this the execution step, where the AI shows how it got the answer.
Okay, that makes sense. So the researchers looked at all these experiments. What were some of the surprises they found? Did it live up to the hype?
Well, they thought COTI would make AI better at, all kinds of reasoning tasks, but they found this really interesting thing. COTI is really good at, doing the steps of reasoning, but not so much at figuring out what those steps are.
So it's good at following instructions, but not making them.
Exactly. And it's especially good for, what we call symbolic reasoning, math problems, logic puzzles, things with clear steps. They saw, a 14.2% improvement for symbolic reasoning, 12.3% for math, 6.9% for logical reasoning.
Wow, those are big improvements.
Yeah.
So COTI works best when the AI has clear rules to follow.
Yeah, that's the idea. The paper says tasks like converting a word problem into equations and then solving them have two main steps, right? Planning and execution. And they found that COTI really boosts the execution part.
So it's like COTI helps the AI follow a recipe perfectly.
Yeah.
But maybe not come up with the recipe itself.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
But even the best cooks, have their limits. What about areas where COTI didn't work so well? Where did it fall short?
Well, they found that for symbolic reasoning, COTI was helpful, yeah, but LLMs using external tools did even better.
Huh. So the AI gets the plan, but it's not as good at, doing the calculations.
Exactly. It's like having a blueprint, but not the right tools to actually build it.
Right.
They found that if you give an LLM, like a Python interpreter, it can solve math problems perfectly. Every time. Way better than COTI could.
So it's not just step-by-step instructions then. It's also about giving the AI the right tools.
Yeah.
Okay. But before we move on, I want to talk about this thing with the MMLU and the MMLU Pro data sets. Yeah. Those are huge, right?
Yeah.
What's the takeaway there?
Yeah, those are big data sets used for benchmarking AI reasoning, so kind of hard to categorize neatly. But they found something really interesting. Questions with an equal sign, which usually means there's an equation, got the most benefit from COTI.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But questions without an equal sign, they saw little to no improvement.
That's fascinating. So even within these huge data sets, the pattern holds up. COTI is best for symbolic reasoning, which usually has equations.
Right. It's not just about thinking step by step. It's about what you're thinking step by step about.
Exactly. And to test this further, they looked at symbolic reasoning tasks like those math problems and broke them down into two stages: planning and execution.
Right.
And they used a bunch of different prompt types to see which stage benefited from COTI the most. So there was direct answer, COTI, plan plus direct solver, plan plus a COTI solver, and plan plus tool solver.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. That's a lot. Can you explain what those all mean?
Sure. So direct answer and code, we already talked about.
Right.
Think of the plan prompts as giving the AI the first part of the solution, like saying, here's the equation you need to solve.
Got it.
Direct solver is where the AI tries to solve it without step-by-step reasoning.
Okay.
Cost solver lets the AI use COT to work through the plan, showing its work.
Okay. Yeah.
And finally, tool solver is like giving the AI a toolbox. It gets the plan and then chooses the best tool to solve it.
Ah, okay. So they're trying to isolate whether COT is better at planning or executing.
Exactly. But they found that even though COT was good at execution, it And Plan plus Cot Solver didn't do as well as the Plan plus Tool Solver approach. Like, LLMs can understand the logic, but they need a calculator to help with the numbers.
Right. Like they get it, but they need help putting it into practice.
Okay.
So that makes sense. But the paper also looked at other data sets like Common Sense QA, Strategy QA, and UPAC-SR. Those seem like they test the AI's common sense. What did they find there?
Yeah, so even in those tasks, the results for COAT were mixed. Strategy QA did see improvements with CODA across different models, but others, like music, didn't really benefit.
So it seems like even for common sense, Cody isn't always the answer. What even is common sense for an AI, right?
Yeah, that's the big question. This research really shows how hard it is to make AI think like humans. It's not just logic and equations, it's about understanding language, culture, all that.
Yeah, it makes you appreciate just how complex our brains are. So we've talked about the limitations of code, especially compared to tools. But what about like the real world? How does this research help us build better AI?
Well, the possibilities are huge. Imagine AI assistants that don't just understand us, but can actually reason through complex problems and give us helpful solutions. Or AI tutors that adapt to different learning styles.
Yeah.
Or AI scientists that analyze massive amounts of data.
Wow, that would be amazing. Like it could revolutionize so many things. Education, research, customer service, all sorts of things.
Exactly. But before we get too carried away, there is one limitation. They mention dataset contamination.
Dataset contamination. What's that?
So it means that some of these LLMs might have been trained on data that included the datasets used in these experiments.
Oh.
So it might look like they're reasoning, but they might just be remembering answers they've already seen.
I see. Like giving a student a test they've already seen the answers to.
Yeah, exactly. Not a fair test.
Yeah.
But they did try to account for this.
Okay, good. How?
They used a range of LLM sizes, including smaller ones that probably haven't memorized everything. They also used harder data sets, like GSM-8K hard, which are less likely to have been seen before. And they also included newer data sets made after a lot of these LLMs were trained.
So it sounds like they did their best to avoid that problem.
Right.
But even with that, this study is still really important. It tells us a lot about how to improve AI reasoning.
Definitely. And it's important to remember that we're still just starting to understand AI reasoning.
Sure.
There's still a lot to learn.
Okay, so before we move on to our final thoughts, let's recap some key takeaways for our listeners. Okay, so big picture. Koki prompting is cool, but it's not like a magic bullet. It's really good for execution, especially with the right tools, right?
Yeah, exactly. They found that CUT-T can really help with the doing part of a task, like solving the math problem. But it's not always the best for the planning part. And for really complex stuff, giving LLMs access to special tools is even better.
So it's like Coty gives them the instructions, but sometimes they still need like a toolkit to do the actual work.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And it makes you think about, the future of AI. Maybe it's not just about prompting and language models. Maybe we need to think about how to connect LLMs with like all sorts of different tools.
Like building a whole AI ecosystem, giving them everything they need to solve different kinds of problems.
Exactly.
But before we go there, I'm curious about like things that need more than just logic and calculations.
Okay.
Like creativity or intuition or emotional intelligence. Does Coty have limits in those areas?
That's a great question, and researchers are definitely looking into that. The study focused on symbolic reasoning, which is more like structured. But for things like creativity or emotional intelligence, it's not clear yet how well Corti works. Those are things where humans are still, much better.
So it's not about AI replacing humans. It's more like AI helping humans be even better.
Exactly. Think of it as a tool. AI can help us with big problems like climate change or disease, but we need to use it carefully, ethically, and, always with humans in control.
That's a really cool way to think about it. It's not us versus them. It's us and them working together.
Yeah. And it shows why we need to keep researching and talking about AI. We need to understand the good and the bad and make sure we're using it for good.
Well, I think we've given everyone a lot to think about today. We talked about chain of thought prompting, what it's good at, what it's not so good at, and how it might change AI in the future.
Yeah, we just scratched the surface of AI reasoning and the possibilities.
And if you want to learn more, definitely check out the full paper, Tornado Code Chain of Thought Helps Mainly.pdf. The link is in the show notes. It'll really make you think about where AI is going and how it might change our world.
It's a fascinating look at, how humans and AI might work together.
For sure. So the big question now is, if tools are the key to making AI even better, what are the best tools for different types of thinking? And where will humans still be essential, even with all this amazing AI? Those are the things we'll keep exploring as this field keeps growing. So until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep.